Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Thomas. Today we're back here with Game Theory. Today is The Legend of Deltarune is a lie. So yeah, we're looking into the lore of Deltarune. See what the heck is going on. I mean, 3 and 4 are out. I still have to play the first game and the I still gotta keep up. Man, I would just go straight to Deltarune, but I still gotta hang out with Undertale first. And I'm planning that. I just gotta find the time to put it in, Anyway, enough about me. Let's just get to the theory, see what's up. Be sure to like, subscribe for more. Hope you enjoy. Here we go.
A portion of today's episode is sponsored by WB Games. The Legend of the Deltarune is a lie. Many of the characters we've fallen in love with actually play very different roles than we originally thought. And now it's time to reveal the truth. The truth about our heroes, their greatest enemy, and the Legend of the Deltarune itself. Hello Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that promises to give the new Pope Leo a copy of Deltarune if given the chance. But if I'm bringing up that dead meme, that can only mean one thing. Deltarune chapters 3 and 4 have finally arrived, and I have been dying to get stuck into these new installments of the story, have some questions answered from previous chapters, and as always, try to solve the new questions these chapters present. And there is a lot to discuss, my friends. We're going to be uncovering the true identities of some familiar characters and what their roles are within Deltarune, learning that the things we thought to be set in stone may not actually be true anymore. Seems to be a running theme on this channel recently. Yep. And of course, figuring out what it all means for the future of this franchise. So, gulp down that juice, theorists. It's time to open up a dark fountain and dive back into the world of Deltarune. Lee?
Well, there is more, but I mean, it has been a while, so don't at me. I honestly don't remember how this whole thing goes, but you do you. I haven't played Deltarune in a while, so I don't remember the exact details, but last I remember seeing was Chris opening up a dark portal in his house. Susie and Toriel in the same place. Not surprised. But anywho, let's go.
What are you doing here?
Hi, Lee.
Are you here to help me take on the lore of Deltarune?
What? No, don't be ridiculous. I'm here because today's sponsor needs us to save the DC universe.
Now who's being ridiculous? DC is Film Theory's thing, not mine.
Tom, you don't understand. It's a DC game.
Oh, I guess you could say that worlds collide.
No. Bad.
Okay, fine, but you're gonna stay here and help me with the comic book stuff. If you haven't heard of it, DC Worlds Collide is the brand new squad-based RPG for iOS and Android, where it is your job to defend the world from the evil crime syndicate. Basically, evil versions of all of your favorite DC heroes. And so, it's up to you to form an elite squad to face them.
There's over 70 characters to choose from, both from the side of good and the side of evil, like Wonder Woman, Harley Quinn, Batman, and even deep cuts like Blue Beetle and Constantine.
And in celebration of the upcoming movie and inspired by his latest appearance, Superman is the first new character to join the roster and is available right now, with Guy Gardner, Mr. Terrific, and Crypto arriving later this summer to form the ultimate movie powerhouse.
Oh, so you do know some DC characters then?
Just because I'm the game guy doesn't mean I don't watch movies sometimes. But from a gaming aspect, the funnest part of this game for me is all about strategy. By combining different groups of heroes and villains, you can get team synergies that truly make you an unstoppable force.
Plus, you get some unique interactions, too.
Wait, there's lore? Ugh, now I've got to find them all. And you guys can too by clicking the link in the description or scanning the QR code on screen to download the game today for free. Thanks to DC Worlds Collide for sponsoring this video, and thanks to Lee for giving me a hand.
You're welcome, Tom.
Thanks, Lee.
Now, how do I get back to film theory?
I don't know, but I gotta get into the dark world to figure out Deltarune, so... Bye! It's been almost 4 years since Chapter 2 was released, and over a year since our last video on it. So before we get too deep into this dark world, let me give you a quick recap. Deltarune is the spiritual successor to the wildly popular indie RPG Undertale, a game where every small decision you made, from defeating enemies to how you spoke to characters, completely altered the outcome of the game. Deltarune, however, works a little bit differently. There aren't multiple paths you can take that lead to different endings. Characters aren't killed killed, but instead the battles end after a certain amount of damage is made and you spare them. The whole theme of this game is that your choices don't matter. Over the last 2 chapters, we met Chris, a quiet individual who explores places called the Dark Worlds with former bully Susie. During these adventures, they meet Ralse, a creature from the Dark World who wants Chris to fulfill the legend of the Deltarune. This prophecy was that 3 heroes, a human, a monster, and a prince from the dark, would seal the dark fountains and banish the angels' heaven. Again, highlighting the idea that their destinies are set. They cannot be changed. And even if you try to force a change, like you can in chapter 2, where you do a genocide-like run, making your friendly neighbor Noelle freeze enemies to death, it still doesn't change the outcome. It only affects how you got there and how Noelle behaves. Not exactly what people were expecting when the game first came out, but something you can do to affect the outcome of this channel is hitting that subscribe button. We're actually on our way to hitting 20 million subscribers, and we're planning something really special for when we hit it. But if you want to find out what that is, you gotta hit that button. If you're skilled enough, that is.
There you go.
Oh, wow, you actually did it. I'd better get to planning then. But in the meantime, let's chat about chapter 3, because we are met with a similar linear path to the previous chapters. In chapter 3, we travel through the Dark World opened by Chris at the end of chapter 2, where we take on Tenna, the TV set that has been forgotten. Tenna has Chris's mother Toriel imprisoned under the instruction of the Knight. This is a character we have been waiting to hear more about from the first few chapters. They are a big part of the Legend of the Deltarune, being the one who is trying to bring around the Roaring, an apocalyptic event that will doom everyone. And by the end of chapter 3, the Knight shows themselves, defeating our heroes and fleeing to a bunker in town with poor Undyne in tow. Chris and Susie discover that there is a code into this bunker, but they believe they have to get it from the mayor, Noelle's mother. This is where chapter 4 kicks off. Susie and Chris invite themselves over to Noelle's to snoop. After finding part of the code, a new dark fountain is formed at the church nearby. Susie and Chris enter and begin to learn about the prophecy of the Deltarune. Once again, Chris seals the dark fountain after going up against the Roaring Knight and the Titan that they summon, a sign of the Roaring that is to come. And you know what? Let's talk about the Roaring Knight for a minute. For a long time, their identity has been a mystery hanging over this community. Could it be Father Alvin? He seemed mighty suspicious. Was it really Chris because they opened a dark fountain at the end of chapter 2? Well, finally, we've gotten to see the Roaring Knight in the flesh, or darkness, and it's clearly not Chris. Would be pretty tricky to fight against yourself. But then, who is it? Well, the first major clue we get is that the Knight isn't like other darkness. Ralse has made it clear over various chapters that darkness cannot leave the dark world because they aren't really real like Chris and Susie are. They just exist as playing cards, toys, objects that take on new meaning in the shadows. But after you defeat, or more likely lose to the Roaring Knight, he runs away to the world of light and is able to exist inside the bunker, implying that this Knight isn't a darkener, but a lightener like Chris and Susie that is able to exist in both worlds. And with this being a lightener, we should also be able to take a look at their physical appearance to narrow it down more. Chris and Susie still look like themselves in the dark world, so it's likely there will be some similarities between the Knight and their lightener form. Starting with the head. It's clear that this Roaring Knight has antlers. Other than making him look pretty cool, this connects the Roaring Knight specifically to Noelle and her family, the Holidays, a family of reindeer. Immediately, my mind went to Carol, Noelle's mother. She seemed pretty evil so far, with her red text talking directly to the player and her neglectful treatment of Noelle. She even has a katana on the wall, which would fit the Knight's sword. But when I looked more closely at the Knight's sword, something else caught my attention. When they hold it upright, we can see that the bottom has a flat edge. If this were a katana or any other traditional sword, that flat part in the pixel art would be higher up to act as a guard for the hand. But this one is at the bottom. Plus, if you take a look at the top of the sword, it's more rounded than it is pointy. The pose almost reminds me of when I was a kid and how I tried to balance a baseball bat in my hand.
Who hasn't done
In
that?
previous chapters, Noelle recalls how her older sister Des would hit Chris with a wiffle bat if they were lying. And we know that taking items into the dark world transforms them, like our sword really just being a pencil. Des is also the only member of the family we haven't met yet. We actually know very little about Des, other than her full name is December, keeping with the holiday theme. She is no longer around, and weirdly, that she's left-handed, based on her mouse being on the left side of her computer. And wouldn't you know it, the knight also wields their sword in their left hand. But there's more than a wiffle bat sword that...
So, wait, does that mean that knight was corrupted? Or, okay, sorry, I'm trying to, think. Okay, let's say this is Des. Who corrupted her? I don't know, it's just, Lightners could become a Darkener hybrid or something? Is there, something going on in this town? Because that seems like what's going on here. But, still, what? What is going on here? I know, I haven't played, but still, you have to admit, this is weird. Also, the fact that the knight took Undyne. Why? Out of all the characters, why her? So weird. You have to take a guess, but what is happening? And the fact that Chris was able to take the heart out, I thought it was just Chris, rebelling against us, Angel's Grace. But could there be something else going on? There's got to be an outside influence. I thought we were the bad guys. Heck, I think Game Theory actually suggested that back in the last theory, too. But what if that was not the case? Someone's just actively trying to start these portals, possessed us, or at least possessed Chris to, take us out, lock us up, so they can open the dark portals. It does explain what happened, but still, what the heck is happening? Anyway, let's keep going. There's got to be more.
Connects the Roaring Knight to Des. When trying to look for the code to the bunker, Chris enters Des's room and finds Des's guitar. That guitar has shown up once before during the Spamtum Sweepstakes ARG that happened a few years ago. Players found a web link called deltarune.com/Des. By going to that webpage and clicking on the guitar, it plays a song called findher.ogg. This musical motif is also present in the Roaring Knight's theme song. The music in this game is exceptional. Toby Fox is a fantastic composer, and so to make a song with such a similar motif cannot be a mere coincidence. Especially when in Chapter 3, there is a slot machine where you can enter as many points as you like to get a prize. And if you choose to spend 1,225 points, a strange room appears. In this room is another machine that contains a piece of lacquer. Small, dark, and triangular, just like a guitar pick. And don't think I forgot about the number of points you enter to get to this secret room. 1225, as in December 25th, Christmas, a December holiday. And the cherry on top of all of this is that when Chris actually looks at this guitar in Chapter 4, what do they find? The code to the bunker. The code to the bunker that the Roaring Knight is hiding in is inside Des's guitar. Des is the Roaring Knight. But then why is she fighting us? Why is she trying to bring about the roaring, letting darkness take over the light world and letting Titans rule? Well, it all comes down to the rest of the Legend of the Deltarune. Or should I say, the real legend. In Chapter 4, when we enter the Dark World in the church, a church that believes in the Legend of the Deltarune, by the way, we encounter glass panels that Ralsei reveals are the prophecy of the Deltarune. You'd think we already knew all of this. We were told most of it by Ralsei in Chapter 1. But it turns out there's a little more to the story, and something about it wasn't sitting right with me. In the later part of the prophecy, it says this. The first hero, the cage with human souls and parts. The second hero, the girl with hope crossed on her heart. And the third hero, the prince alone in the deepest dark. And last was the girl. At last was the girl. When reading the prophecy, Susie comments on how the prince is Ralsei, the first hero is Chris, and the girl is her. That, however, didn't sit right with me because the image we have of the girl doesn't look like Susie. The image of the first hero is the heart, which is us and Chris being the vessel. The image of the third hero is Rolsei in a robe, but the image of the second hero is carrying a sword and wearing what looks like a gown. Susie doesn't ever really carry a sword. She's known for her axe, and she definitely hasn't worn a gown. Plus, when Susie attempts to open the dark fountain later in the chapter, all the colors were wrong. Things aren't exactly the same as the real Dark World, because though Susie knows how to open a dark fountain, she isn't the real hero spoken of in the prophecy. Susie is simply believing it must be her because Rolsei told her that she was the second hero back in the first chapter. But if I'm saying that's wrong, that Susie isn't the second hero, then there's only really one other character it can be. A girl that wears a gown, has been a member of the hero's party, and when you combine her ring of thorns that you get from her special root with a pure crystal, you get an item called the Twisted Sword. Guys, it's Noelle. Noelle has become a more significant character as the chapters have gone on, and by taking on the Snowgrave route in chapter 2, where you force Noelle to cast magic and freeze people, Noelle is becoming more confident and is gaining the ability to fight. In chapter 4, you also encounter these priestly figures of the Deltarune, each of them telling you a tale connected to the prophecy, and one of them says, "Who will call the girl who snows?" Which is referring to what we literally do during the Spamton Neo fight. We call on Noelle's name and she is summoned, killing Spamton with her ice magic. In another part of the prophecy, it says, "Love finds its way to the girl." The image here is the same as the second hero, but it has a heart like ours inside it. On a more innocent level, this could be referring to Noelle's crush that she has on Susie, but given all the references to the Snowgrave route that we've already had, I believe there's a darker meaning behind this. In Undertale, we were taught about the love
is
stat.
level of
When we kill enemies, our love increases, but the stat actually stands for level of violence. During the Snowgrave route, Noelle was pushed to become more violent, and the level of violence found its way to her. And this is made super clear in chapter 4. If you've taken the Snowgrave route in chapter 2, you will receive a unique cutscene in chapter 4 when Chris and Susie are in Noelle's house. After trying to find the bunker code in the old guitar, Chris pulls out the heart and stuffs it into a drawer. It's at this point that we start behaving real sus and vent. While moving around the vents, we can hear a conversation between Chris and Noelle. She says that last night she saw Chris, the real Chris, who told her that everything was all okay. Until our heart makes its way back into Chris, and the entire conversation shifts as we prove to Noelle that the events of chapter 2 weren't a dream like she thought. Chris then puts the thorn ring back onto Noelle's finger, and when we do, a red crack appears on the screen. This moment is us, the heart. We are the ones trying to control Noelle, forcing her to use her magic, helping her to find her level of violence. And as chapter 4 continues, we see these actions take effect. In the Dark World, when Susie goes ahead, Rolsei suggests instead of us going on ahead, we think of someone. If we choose to think of Noelle, the screen turns black and a small red dot with the words "thank you" appears. Then at the very end of chapter 4, the screen fades to black and once again the red dot appears. But this time, it's bigger. The red dot is Noelle's heart forming, love finding its way to the girl, just as the prophecy said it would. All of this is pointing to Noelle, and more specifically, the Snowgrave route being part of the prophecy. The Snowgrave route is the canon series of events. Even though it felt like it was a decision we were able to make, Toby Fox is once again showing us that it was destined to be. This is also why the Night Death is trying to bring about the Roaring. The Roaring is what will summon the heroes and force them to banish the angels' heaven, banish us. Just like Chris, they want us gone so that their sister is left alone and safe, which explains why we see both of those characters working together throughout the chapters. Chris receives some mysterious messages from their phone, which are implied to actually be the Knight. And if you manage to defeat the Knight at the end of chapter 3, they will literally knight Chris. Chris wants us removed from their body, but they also clearly hate what we are doing to Noelle, putting us in a trash can and kicking the living daylights out of us after we put the thorn ring back on her finger. It's their goal to bring about the Roaring and force us, the angel, away from them and the lives of their friends. But then, where does all of that leave our monster girl Susie? Is she just gonna get sidelined? Not exactly. In Chapter 3, when you're allowed to play the 8-bit minigame, there is a secret ice palace you can travel to. On the door is the Deltarune symbol, but it's slightly different to what you might remember. It's pretty hard to see because, well, it's 8-bit, but the symbol actually has 4 triangles on it instead of the usual 3. Before now, we believed the 3 triangles represented Chris, Susie, and Rolsei, the 3 heroes. But now we're being shown 4 people are a part of this, and that's actually reflected in the prophecy too. It's just that Susie, and by association we, have been conflating 2 parts of it. The girl that Susie believes to be her is mentioned twice in the prophecy, once as the second hero and the second time at the end. At last was the girl. This is a list of characters. First the vessel, second the girl, third the prince, and then last is another girl. There are 2 separate girls in this prophecy, and if you look into the game files, the image used behind the final girl is labeled Rude Buster. Rude Buster is a move unique to Susie, so though she may not be named as one of the 3 heroes, she clearly has something important to do with the prophecy. And I think I know what that role is. You see, in Chapter 4, Rolsei confesses to Susie that he was intentionally keeping part of the prophecy.
Final tragedy unveiled.
Susie manages to get ahead and read it, but before we are able to read it, Susie smashes the glass and starts laughing. She says that she or Chris would never let that happen. Whatever is on that last panel was something that Rolsei was worried about Susie and Chris seeing, and clearly it has an effect on Susie. Throughout the chapters, Susie has always struggled to accept reality, constantly denying whatever is being said and wanting to forge her own path. But this time feels different. It's not an angry defiance. It's uncomfortable, like, haha, but that's not gonna happen, right? And then she quickly tries to change the subject. So what did it say? Well, the lines before this talk about a final tragedy unveiling, meaning that whatever the destroyed panel said is revealing that tragedy. The ultimate tragedy that I could think of, one that would definitely make Susie uncomfortable, would be the death of a beloved character. And I believe that character is Susie herself. I mean, at the very end of the chapter, she starts to tell Chris how she really feels, and it feels very finite, almost like it's her ending monologue, her coming to terms with the reality that is set before her, like she's going to die, and is letting Chris know how she really feels and how she doesn't want to move on. Rolsei is also acting sketchy throughout both of these new chapters. Not only are they hesitant whenever Susie brings up the prophecy, but Rolsei also makes a point to always talk to Chris about how nice Susie is. He even does it directly after Susie smashes the glass, and I always thought that was a little suspicious. Obviously, one of the reasons Rolsei is doing this is because they know what we know. Susie isn't one of the heroes. He jumped the gun when Susie arrived and made an assumption only to realize it wasn't correct, and that she is instead the second girl mentioned. But the real reason he's acting so strange, I suspect, is because Rolsei knows of Susie's fate, that she isn't long for this world, and so he's trying to make sure however long she has left is an enjoyable experience, rather than us ruining it by favoring Noelle over her. And actually, Noelle is a big reason why I think Susie has to die. Remember, this tragedy leads us to banishing the angels' heaven, which, as we spoke about in a previous theory, is the good ending here. We are the angel and our actions are bad for these characters, as we've seen play out with Noelle. And actually, Noelle growing in her levels of violence leads me to believe that we, the players, are growing her powers in order that during the final battle, the angelic-looking Noelle will become the perfect vessel for us to use in order to control everything and everyone. But I also believe Susie, despite not being one of the main 3, is the one that's going to save Noelle, and in the end, the entire world. In Chapter 4, Chris has a moment of playing the piano. Chris is actually great at playing the piano. We see it referenced time and time again throughout the game, but while we are in control of them, they suddenly suck because we cannot play piano. However, during Chapter 4, Susie calls Chris by their name and tells them to play very sincerely, which leads to Chris, for a brief moment, gaining back control and playing without our inputs. Now, we know that Chris can rip out our heart and take back control of their body at any moment, but that is not what happens here, and that's why it's so special. Chris is able to gain back control while we are still inside of Chris. Susie's kind and authentic words had the ability to tear Chris away from our control, and I believe that Susie is gonna be able to do the same thing for Noelle. However, Noelle is clearly far more powerful powerful than Chris. That's the whole point of the Snowgrave route, making her stronger, which means it's going to take something much bigger to move Noelle. But we do know that Noelle has a massive crush on Susie, so seeing her die while under our control because of our control, I suspect that will be enough to pull Noelle back to reality, out of our control, so that the three heroes, Chris, Noelle, and Rolsei, can banish us for good. Now, the prophecy follows a classic AABBC rhyming scheme, and lines 1, 3, and 5 use 10 syllables, while lines 2 and 4 use 8. So while this next bit is purely conjecture, I'm going to put some money on the prophecy going a little something like this. And then, when all hope is lost for the tale, the final tragedy unveils. To save the world, there is only one way. The girl's death breaks the angel's sway. Only then will the worlds be saved. I'll admit, a lot of this is on the more speculative side, but what an awesome story arc it would be for Susie. The class bully turned into a selfless warrior, willing to do whatever it takes to save the world. Although it would also mean her losing one of the character traits that makes her so unique. Susie is constantly defiant, attacking when we don't tell her to, moving around without our inputs. But if she does sacrifice herself for the good of the world, then she's just like Chris, the Knight, Noelle, Rolsei, even us, who are just following a set path that Toby Fox has pre-planned. Then again, I suppose that's kind of been the point from the start, hasn't it? But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory! Thanks for watching. And thanks again to WB Game.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could see that. I mean, remember, bold choices don't matter in the first chapter. Like, I mean, at that point, you're just kind of like going along with it. Though, I'm not sure if, like, Snowgrave was actually us, or, I don't know, maybe our attempt to redefine it. So it begs the question, like, say you don't do Snowgrave, like, will the story just play out differently? Because I feel like if Chapter 5 comes out, there's, like, two options. One, you didn't do Snowgrave, and the other, you do. Really shows, like, what the heck? I'm just curious about that, but I guess we'll learn more once Chapter 5 comes out, but it does beg the question. Like, say we do go for, like, say we go Deltarune, right? Like, once we get to Chapter 2, should we do Snowgrave or not? I think that's the big question. But for now, I think got plenty of other games, but for now, I think that's best just to take a break from. Well, till next time, guys. Thanks for watching. Adios.